The Scan Pyramids project used cosmic rays to peer inside the Great Pyramid of Giza, and what they found silenced the room. A massive void, 30 meters long, hidden above the Grand Gallery for 4,500 years. Not a crack. Not a flaw in the masonry. A deliberate, sealed space that appears on no official map. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities confirmed the discovery in 2017. Then they closed the case. No drilling. No camera probe. No explanation. The space has existed since the 4th dynasty, and the people in charge of Egypt's history have decided you don't need to know what's inside it. That void is just the beginning. Because inside this pyramid, the most studied structure in human history, there are at least 7 secrets that the official record cannot explain. Anomalies written in stone. Mathematical constants that should be impossible. Chambers that were sealed before the mortar was dry. Tool marks that require technology that wasn't supposed to exist for another 4,000 years. The pyramid doesn't lie. The data doesn't lie. But the story we've been told about who built it, how, and why, that story has some serious problems. In this video, we're going to look at 7 things inside and around the Great Pyramid of Giza that the mainstream narrative has never been able to fully explain. We're not talking about fringe theories. We're talking about peer-reviewed findings, geological surveys, and architectural measurements that sit in the scientific literature largely ignored by the documentaries you grew up watching. We'll examine the sealed big void detected by muon radiography, the stellar alignments of the so-called air shafts, the geological anomaly in the subterranean chamber, the inhuman precision of the granite in the king's chamber, the mathematical constants encoded in the structure's dimensions, the missing capstone and what it tells us about the pyramid's original purpose, and finally, the feature that only becomes visible twice a year, from the air, that most people have never heard of. This is the Great Pyramid as the data actually describes it. Stay with us. In 2017, an international team of physicists published results in the journal Nature. Using muon radiography, the same technology used to scan volcanoes and nuclear reactors, they detected a previously unknown cavity inside the Great Pyramid. They called it the Big Void. Muons are subatomic particles produced when cosmic rays hit the upper atmosphere. They pass through dense material but are absorbed at different rates depending on density. By placing detectors around the pyramid and measuring the flux of particles passing through, the team produced a 3-dimensional map of the interior. And in that map, directly above the Grand Gallery, there is a space that should not be there. The void is at least 30 meters long. It runs roughly parallel to the Grand Gallery below it. It is completely inaccessible. No passage connects to it. No door, no shaft, no crack in the outer casing leads to it. It was designed to be invisible and unreachable from every angle. Now, the official response has been cautious. Some Egyptologists suggest it could be a structural chamber, a deliberate architectural decision to reduce the weight pressing down on the Grand Gallery. That's possible. But here's the problem: the 5 relieving chambers above the king's chamber already serve that exact purpose. They are the weight distribution system. They are documented, surveyed, and understood. The Big Void does not follow their pattern. It is in a different location, a different orientation, and a different scale. The Scan Pyramids team has proposed using an endoscopic camera to peer inside through a microborehole, a 6mm hole through the limestone. The Egyptian authorities have not approved the proposal. As of today, the Big Void remains sealed. What's inside it has not been seen by a human eye since the pyramid was completed around 2560 BC. The Great Pyramid has 4 narrow shafts, 2 in the king's chamber and 2 in the queen's chamber, that cut diagonally through the pyramid's body at precise angles. For over a century, these were called air shafts. The assumption was ventilation. That assumption is wrong, and archaeologists have known it for decades. The shafts in the queen's chamber don't connect to the outside. They stop at interior walls, sealed by small limestone blocks with copper fittings. You can't breathe through a shaft that ends in a door. These are not air shafts. They never were. In 1964, astronomer Virginia Trimble and Egyptologist Alexander Badawi published a paper demonstrating something remarkable. the shafts are precisely aligned to specific stars as they appeared from Giza around 2500 BC. The southern shaft of the King's Chamber points to Orion's belt, specifically to the star Al-Nitak, the lowest of the three. The northern shaft of the King's Chamber points to Thuban, which was the pole star during the Old Kingdom. The shafts in the Queen's Chamber align to Sirius and to Kochab in Ursa Minor. These are not coincidences. Achieving these alignments required calculating the elevation angles with extraordinary precision in a structure where a single degree of error would have sent the shaft pointing at empty sky. The builders knew exactly where those stars would be at specific times of night. They locked those coordinates into stone. The sealed doors at the end of the Queen's Chamber shafts were reached by a robot camera in 1993. The robot found a small limestone door with 2 copper handles. The engineer leading the project was removed before the door was opened. In 2002, a different team drilled through the door and inserted a fiber optic camera. Behind the first door was another door, 8 inches behind it. That second door has never been opened. 2 secrets in, and the official map of this pyramid is already falling apart. If you want to follow this kind of investigation, the kind that goes where the evidence actually leads, subscribe to Ancient Echoes Uncovered. New discoveries every week. We'll be right back with the anomaly buried 60 feet below the pyramid's foundation. Most people don't know there is a third chamber inside the Great Pyramid, cut directly into the bedrock beneath the structure. The King's Chamber is above. The Queen's Chamber is in the middle. And below everything, accessible through a descending passage that cuts down at a steep angle, is the Subterranean Chamber. It is unfinished. The walls are rough. The ceiling is uneven. There is a pit cut into the floor that goes nowhere. The official explanation has always been that this chamber was an abandoned design. The builders changed their plans mid-construction and moved the burial chamber higher up. A logical explanation. Neat, tidy, dismissible. But the geology tells a different story. Geologist Robert Schoch, the researcher who redated the Sphinx based on water erosion patterns, analyzed the rock surfaces in and around the subterranean chamber. What he found was evidence of erosion consistent with prolonged exposure to water. Not tools. Not time. Water. The Giza Plateau sits on limestone. Limestone erodes in very specific ways when water moves through it for extended periods. The pattern in the subterranean chamber matches what you would expect from a site that was, at some point in the distant past, subjected to significant water flow. This aligns with geological evidence of major flooding events in the Nile Valley, some of which date back well before 3000 BC. If the subterranean chamber was carved into a landscape already shaped by catastrophic water events, then the site is older than the pyramid built above it. The pyramid may have been constructed over a location that was already considered sacred, a location marked by geology, not by a pharaoh's decree. The King's Chamber is built entirely from red granite. The blocks were quarried in Aswan, 500 miles up the Nile, and transported to Giza. Each block weighs between 25 and 80 tons. There are over 400 of them. The ceiling alone consists of 9 granite beams, each weighing approximately 50 tons, laid side by side without mortar. The precision of this stonework is where the mainstream timeline breaks down completely. The surfaces of the granite blocks are flat to within 0.02 of an inch. The corners are true right angles to within a fraction of a degree. The joints between blocks are so tight that you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. This is not approximate craftsmanship. This is machine-level tolerance. Engineer Christopher Dunn spent 30 years analyzing the tool marks inside the pyramid. What he found in the granite are drill holes with a feed rate, the depth of cut per rotation, approximately 500 times faster than modern diamond-tipped drill bits working on granite. The spiral grooves inside the drill holes indicate that the cutting tool was progressing through solid granite at a rate that is physically impossible with copper tools and sand abrasive, which is what conventional archaeology says the Egyptians used. These drill holes exist. They can be measured. The spiral grooves can be analyzed. The mathematics of the feed rate can be calculated. Dunn published these findings. They have not been refuted. They have been ignored. The granite sarcophagus in the King's Chamber presents the same problem. Its interior surfaces are flat to the same extraordinary tolerance as the walls. It is carved from a single block of solid granite. And the sarcophagus is slightly wider than the passage leading to the chamber. It could not have been carried in after construction. It was placed there before the pyramid was built around it. In 1859, British publisher John Taylor noticed something that had been sitting in plain sight for 4,000 years. If you divide the perimeter of the Great Pyramid's base by twice its height, you get a number very close to pi 3.14159. Accurate to 4 decimal places. At the time, this was considered a coincidence. It no longer is. Take the original height of the pyramid, 146.5 meters, and multiply it by 43,200. You get 6,317 kilometers. The polar radius of the Earth is 6,356 kilometers. The margin of error is less than 1%. Take the perimeter of the base, 921.5 meters, and multiply it by 43,200. You get 39,794 kilometers. The equatorial circumference of the Earth is 40,075 kilometers. Again, less than 1% error. The number 43,200 is not arbitrary. It is exactly half of 86,400, the number of seconds in a day. It is also 600 times 72, and 72 is the number of years it takes for the Earth to complete 1 degree of axial precession, the slow wobble of the planet's axis that completes a full cycle every 25,920 years. The builders encoded the Earth's exact dimensions into this structure using a scaling factor derived from the planet's own rotational mechanics. This requires knowing the Earth's precise circumference and polar radius, knowledge that mainstream history attributes to the ancient Greeks, who lived 2,000 years after this pyramid was already complete. The Great Pyramid is missing its top. The apex is flat, a platform roughly 9 meters across, and it has been that way for as long as recorded history can reach. The capstone, the pyramid ion, is gone. Every complete pyramid has one. Small pyramid ions survive in museums, several are on display in Cairo. They are typically made of polished limestone or granite, coated in electrum, an alloy of gold and silver, designed to catch the first and last light of the sun. The pyramid ion for the Great Pyramid would have been enormous. Several tons, at minimum. There is no record of it being removed. No Arab chronicler mentions its destruction. No medieval account describes its fall. It simply does not appear in the historical record, which suggests it was gone before any literate civilization was paying close attention. The flat platform at the top is not a broken surface. It does not show the kind of damage you would expect if a heavy capstone had collapsed. The top of the pyramid looks the way it looks because something was removed cleanly, or because it was never placed there at all. Some researchers point to the electrical conductivity of the granite lining the king's chamber, the precise alignment of the structure to true north accurate to within 3/60ths of a degree, and the pyramid's position relative to the Earth's electromagnetic field, and argue that the capstone was a functional component of a system whose purpose we have lost. Whether that argument holds or not, the fact remains, the most famous structure on Earth is incomplete, and nobody knows where the missing piece went. Here is the feature that most people have never heard of. If you photograph the Great Pyramid from the air, not any time of day, but specifically during the spring and autumn equinoxes, at the precise moment of sunset, something becomes visible that cannot be seen from the ground under any circumstances. The 4 faces of the pyramid are not flat. They are concave. Each face curves slightly inward toward the center, creating a structure that is not 4-sided but 8-sided. This concavity is built into the casing stones across an entire face stretching 230 meters at the base, at a degree of precision that required the builders to calculate the curve consistently across thousands of individual stones. It is invisible at ground level. It cannot be seen from the plateau. It only reveals itself from directly above, at the specific sun angle that occurs twice a year. The builders designed a feature that could only be fully appreciated from a vantage point they had no known means of reaching. This was first documented in a 1940 aerial survey by British Air Force pilot P. E. Groves, who noticed the indentation while flying over Giza. The observation was largely forgotten until photographs from the equinoxes confirmed it in the 1990s. Egyptologists have acknowledged the concavity is real. No consensus exists on why it was built that way. Here is what we know in total. The Great Pyramid encodes pi and the Earth's circumference. It aligns with specific stars to 4 decimal places of angular precision. It contains a seal void that nobody is allowed to investigate. It was built with tool marks that imply technology the builders were not supposed to have. Its subterranean foundation shows signs of water erosion from a period long before the Old Kingdom. Its capstone is missing without explanation. And its faces curve in a way that only makes sense if you are viewing it from the air. None of these facts in isolation would be enough. But together, they describe a structure that is fundamentally different from everything we were taught. The pyramid is not a monument to a pharaoh's ego. It is a physical record, encoded in geometry, of a level of knowledge that either came from somewhere we haven't identified or was passed down from a civilization we haven't found yet. The void above the Grand Gallery is still sealed. When, if ever, it is opened, whatever is inside will either